We're here at the Boston Ballet School, which is the largest ballet school in North America, with over 3,000 students a year. Now, the kind of techniques Joe will be employing today are the same kind of things we did back in the studio. We'll be talking about sync speeds, normal sync, slow sync, and auto FP high speed sync. We'll be talking about modifying the light, bouncing it, concentrating it, and using it in different ways. Now, Joe will be doing all of this using Nikon's CLS wireless flash system. And we'll always keep in mind the direction, the quality, and the color of the light.
Let me make a couple introductions here. This is Samantha. She's from Bismarck, North Dakota. And this is Hannah, who's from New Zealand.
Well, thanks for helping us out today, girls. Joe, when you come into a situation like this, what is the first thing that you do?
Just what I mentioned, the introductions. I introduce myself. I try to get to know my subjects a little bit. The second step would be location assessment.
Okay, and that means what? Taking a look at the light, the bounce surfaces, that kind of thing?
Sure. In this situation, we've got some sunlight coming through the windows, but we also have windows over here, so we have a basically good quality of light, but we're definitely going to have to tweak that with some fill flash, especially when I start to do a portrait of you guys.
What equipment are we starting out with today?
I got a D300 and the 16 to 85, which is a very sharp lens. It's a wonderful lens that can give me the environment, but also come in tight for a portrait.
Great, great. Well, let's get started.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to start maybe Samantha first, and I'm going to ask you to step over here if you wouldn't mind. Remember we were talking earlier, you had a wonderful sort of position and was down on the floor when you were in the middle of stretching. Why don't we start there? Okay. That looks great, absolutely terrific. Perfect. Okay, let's shoot a couple here. Okay, all right. Bob, if you can see what I'm doing here, as you can see, Samantha's got this amazing athletic pose, and at the same time, she's very graceful. Her eyes are, she's got eye contact with the camera. But as you can see, away from that light coming through the window, it's contrasty, and her face is dark. So the very first thing I'm going to do is bring in a little fill flash. As you know, I know we've been doing this a long time. What's one of the first things you try to do anyway is see if you can redirect the light, get it off the camera, if you can.
Exactly.
That's a good strategy. Yeah. So for that, this system makes it easy to move a light off the camera. I'm going to pop up my commander strobe. Now, this built-in here is going to drive a remote flash. We're going to program that into a group and a channel. In this instance, it's going to be channel 1, group A. And I'm going to bring in the SB900. And we'll bring it from this side because, Samantha's direction and her whole body posture is coming from this way. So I'm going to push the light this way.
I'll grab an SB900.
All right, thanks. Sam, that's a great position. What we're going to do is bring a light in here to fill the shadow side of your face.
Got the SB900 set up for remote, and we're going to make sure that sensor is aimed right towards you.
Okay, so group A, channel 1. Here we go. Okay, now the audible signal that's giving me, it tells me via a series of beeps that, yes, I saw the signal, and yes, now I'm recycled. So that's a very handy thing when you're on location. All right, so as you can see, huge change.
Wow. Okay,
just beautiful light. And the amazing thing for me as a photographer is that I did that so simply. Let's try a couple more, okay? And let's emphasize for a minute here how quickly that thing recycles. I'm just gonna go through a whole bunch of exposures really quickly here, okay, Sam? So you just kind of relax, look at camera, and just vary your facial expression, smiles, okay? Here we go. All right, perfect. That's great, perfect, very nice. Okay, the zoom on the lens enables me to get different perspectives from this 16 to 85 without moving my perspective or moving myself around. Perfect. Way to go, way to go. Okay, I'm gonna go vertical.
Now, Joe, we've got the light coming in from a 3/4 angle.
Yep.
Which provides a nice wraparound.
Well, let's take a look and see how we're doing.
Now, you're using normal sync on this.
Yeah, this is a straight up normal situation. I don't have a lot of stress. The subject is not moving. I'm not trying to chase them in any way. So it's a static portrait. So normal sync is perfectly fine for this type of thing. Now, also, when I looked at that and, the value of this huge LCD back here gives me that detail, the eyes are looking a little down. So I'm going to get a little bit of low. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Could you grab that for me?
Sure.
Yep. All right, so, okay. All right, Sam, here we go. I think we're dialed in pretty well. I'm going to come in close. So just keep coming at me with your eyes. Move your expression. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Very nice, very nice. Okay. That's great, that's great, perfect. Very sweet expression. Awesome. Why don't we stand up for a second? Bob, could you grab that fill card? You know, nice thing about this is we can change on the fly. Let's move back a little bit and let me pick up a little light in here. Okay, so this is gonna be a bit of a different exposure. Okay, let's spin even more into the light just a little bit, okay? Very nice, good. Working very close to my fill source here. Good, beautiful. Light, I think there is a little bit strong, so what I can do here, let's just take a stop back out of it and see how we do.
Okay.
Okay, all right, follow me with your eyes there, Sam. That's great, looking good, perfect. And you can drop your hands now and just do a classic dancer expression right at me. Okay, now I'm gonna reorient vertically. Beautiful, right there. I'm still in normal sync. Okay. All right, good, strong portrait solution, side light. But if you notice, that main light's a little poppy, a little hard, okay? We've got the diffuser on, but I think the next step for us here is to go to an umbrella. Bob's gone to get an umbrella. I'd be lost without him. All right, here we go. Great. Perfect. Hey, Bob, while I'm shooting this, would you mind going to get that gold reflector for me, that gold flex fill? Yeah, great smile. Let's just quickly bring some in here, and let's see what happens. You know, light picks up the color of whatever it hits. So let's see if we can introduce a little warm highlight on that far side of the light. Here we go, right at me. So let's take a look. Okay, what we've got here now is with that gold flex fill, there's a little shimmer of warm light, and that's the pickup from the gold side. Nice warmth in a portrait, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
Goes a long way. So let's keep going here. The wonderful thing about the LCD, how bright, how clear it is, and also we can magnify.
Zoom in.
You
Wow,
know,
is that sharp? Look
and
at that.
we can just take a look at every aspect of the picture via the zoom, and you can see the section of the face and the piece of the puzzle there that you're looking at.
This is very similar to the setup that we were using in the studio, and I think the good thing to know about this is that these basic kind of setups are applicable anywhere, you know, in the studio, on location, wherever you go.
The umbrella is a basic tool. How long does it take us to set this up?
30 seconds.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, stick with me now. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so we were at an umbrella there. Very simple portrait headshot, okay? Hey, Hannah, how you doing?
Hi.
Would you mind standing for us? Thanks for working with us today.
Hi.
Appreciate it. Let's try it with a standing portrait where we get a lot of environment. In the other situation, we really had no environment. It was just all about the portrait. But here, we're going to be dealing with a lot of different elements. We've got the window light, a bit of interior light, and if I just go and walk up to Hannah and make a picture, you know what's going to happen, right?
Silhouette City.
Silhouette City.
It's
Here we go.
backlight. The direction is from the back.
All right. So let's just take a look here. So the camera is going to make, you know, a very smart decision here, basically. It is parsing out for me exactly what it's seeing. So it's not making a mistake. But you have to think like your digital camera. What's the camera reacting to?
The brightest part of the light.
Right. So when I'm going to try to work this just via metering with no light at all, one thing you say, well, if I wanted to get detail in Hannah, let's go to a spot meter mode and come right off of her skin tone that's on the shadow side.
Of course, then you lose the highlights, or the highlights burn out behind her.
Let's take a look. Whoa.
Yeah. Now she's properly exposed, but the windows are burned out.
Exactly, exactly. What's the answer there?
Fill light, exactly. Okay.
All right, Hannah, you're being very patient with all this, so I ask you to just stand, maybe move a little bit closer to camera. All right, here we go. Hannah, you look fantastic. So here we go, simple, easy. Let's see how we do. Vast difference, right?
Yeah. That speed light, that makes a huge difference.
I mean, one speed light makes this a photograph as opposed to something that was, just never going to work. So what we're doing here within the dynamic range of the camera, we're applying some light in this direction. And the camera's doing so many things for us, okay? You've got the camera meter picking up all of this as well as the exterior exposure. The lens is giving us distance information. The flash is metering. All of those elements are combining in milliseconds to make this, exposure that I don't even have to do anything to.
Yeah.
Hannah, if you could remember that position, in fact, even just hold it. Bob, let's quickly reorient the light to emphasize her body position, and let's take it over here.
Yeah, I was thinking that
Okay?
a little more.
And if we get a little bit of drama out of this, I think we're just really going to cook.
Yeah.
Always remember, and I know you do, shadows are your friend. you know?
When they're in the right place.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if we can, I'm gonna go over by Hannah, because again, what I do when I change a light, I get my subject's position. Let's scoot it this way, and now let's feather back. Okay, there we go, right about there. Okay. Hannah, again, key that way. Perfect. Let's take a look.
Ooh, wow.
So pretty dramatic,
yes, angular
sort of picture now, okay?
Because the light has come from a 3/4 to almost a 3/4 from behind. It's really beautiful.
So now I'm gonna, a couple of things. I made a wide scene. I've got a little bit of reflection over here. I'm gonna move the angle a little bit tighter. And I think I'm gonna put a little more power into that strobe too.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put up, let's say 1 stop into the speed light.
Okay.
Okay, crop in a little tighter, and here we go. Hannah, again, key that way. Perfect. Gonna reorient vertically for her position now. Let's see how we do.
Wow.
Okay.
That is gorgeous.
Down a little bit if you don't mind, Hannah. That's it. Great. Good, good. Right there, right there. Hold. Beautiful. Perfect. Wonderful. What do you think?
Wow. Joe, we've got a couple of the young ballerinas in those lovely tutus here. We've got that big window with the lovely ambient light out there. What's your thinking on this next shot coming up?
Well, I'm going to use both those elements, put them together into a frame. The window has beautiful color outside. It also helps me in terms of frame, you know, for those two dancers. And what we're going to do is take their tutus, which have beautiful color, and transmit light really well, and backlight them. So what we'll do is we'll put some snoots on those lights that are already zoomed. So we're gonna have a pretty tight pool of light coming out of those and hit the dresses. The effect should be hard when it hits the dress, but then it'll translate softly through all that color, fabric. The way we're treating this lighting scenario is the backlight is really the main light.
Right.
So this frontal light is fill, so I'm gonna treat that very gently. Push a little light through a soft umbrella that's overhead and bounce a little light off the floor, but control it really, really carefully so it doesn't overpower the main effect I'm trying to achieve, which is to get the color of those dance costumes.
Right, right. So the fill light is going to be diffused. The main lights are going to be specular and it should look great.
So what I'm going to do here is make sure that my B group is running. I've got zero compensation dialed into the B group. The A group is directing those background SB900s, and that I'm really playing with because I need a lot of power out of those lights to just push through that fabric.
Yeah.
So let's see how we do here. Ladies, position, wonderful. Okay, that's absolutely terrific. Okay, now, there's such a strong light that's coming from the background.
A little more fill?
I need a little more fill from that B group. So again, instantly and wirelessly, I'm going to go into the menu. And I'm going to take that B group speed light, which is shooting through the umbrella, which is an SB800. I'm going to pop it up. For starters, let's say +1. Hit OK, and see if we get a little more light out of that. Beautiful. OK.
There you go. Yeah.
All right.
Boy, the 800s and the 900s work seamlessly together.
They do. They're the same operating system, if you will, to borrow a computer term. Okay, I've created a bit of a problem for myself that I'm going to have to solve, and that's I've got the reflected umbrella in the window. So I'm going to have to push that back a little bit and perhaps flag it, a term we use called flagging to make sure
yeah, exactly.
that it's not in the window.
Why don't you let me do that for you?
Go ahead, Bob. I'll wait.
How's the flag position, Joe?
Let's just check that out here. Good. Pretty. A little shimmer up there, but it's starting to work, I think there's another thing that we could do here. A small little kicker light from down below could really inform this pretty well.
Yeah, yeah.
So why don't we try another light source?
Okay.
And I think for this one we could use probably an SB600.
600.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's try that. Good, right there, hold, beautiful, stay with me now, stay with me, beautiful. Lovely. That's it, one more, stay there, up. Beautiful, relax, ladies. Awesome. Okay, you guys are great. I think we're done. Fantastic, bravo.
Now, Joe, one of the classic shots that we always face is the group shot. You know, whether it's a Little League team, a wedding group, or even a group of young ballerinas, it always presents a lighting challenge. So what are some of your tips for handling that?
First off, don't do it ever. No, kidding. No, of course, group pictures come with the turf, and the very first thing you have to do with a group is just establish your presence with them, even if it's only for a few seconds. Get to know them a little bit. A little bit of banter, again, as we were talking about before, smooths the road. And then, of course, the issue is the wideness of the group. How do you get light all the way around this group, edge to edge? And the SB900 has a couple of features that will help you out. Illumination patterns is what they're calling them, where you can actually program into the SB900 a dispersion of light that's either center, standard, or even.
Well, I see we have our subjects in place. I'm going to let you go to work.
Okay. Let's come on down this way just a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to come on out just a little bit. There. Okay, Kathy and Effie, come out this way just a hair. Okay, we're going to put you more in a bit of a line there. You guys are going to look at me, and we're going to smile, okay? Count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Pretty terrific. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now you guys keep looking at the camera, okay? Keep looking right here. Okay, fantastic. Oh, excuse me, I think I have to sneeze. I'm going to keep taking pictures as long as you guys keep giggling. Okay, relax, ladies. Stay with me for just a minute or two, okay? Now, Bob.
Yes, sir.
We got a couple of things going on here. What I've done here is I've programmed in a shutter speed that's picking up some of the ambient light behind me.
Slow sync flash.
Exactly. So even though I've got a flash on the camera, which classically might not be the ideal way to go. It's certainly possible. But if I've got even illumination programmed into this and blending some ambient light exposure, take a look. That doesn't look like straight flash at all.
It's not that classic, you know, black background with the harsh light coming from the front. It blends beautifully, and all done automatically by the camera and the flash talking to each other. What's the next step?
Why don't we do the light off the camera?
Okay.
Okay, again, we'll follow our own advice. Let's pull the light off the camera. I'll go back to a commander up in here. I'm going to ask you to hold the off-camera light.
Voice-actuated light stand.
There you go.
All right, I'll put that into remote.
Program remote, and I'm going to double-check my menu.
1A.
All right, here we go. You ready? Fantastic. What's good smiles? Oh, my goodness, ladies. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Let's take a closer. Let's focus in a little bit here. Magnify that image.
The light is even. It's perfectly spread across the group. Everybody looks good, and the blend of available light and flash is perfect there.
It is. You even got, the camera's even reading so much available light, you know, that we have a completely even illumination on the back walls and even some translation through that frosted glass. Pretty amazing.
Hey, Joe, another way to get a nice even spread of light is adding a second one.
Yeah, two lights. In this instance, we're going to go with two SB800s. Ladies, are you ready to do this again?
Yeah.
One more time. All right? We're going to go 3 pictures, fantastic giggles. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Way to go. Irina, I'm looking at you. Good. I know you can do it. I know you can do it. Fantastic. You guys are great. Hang in there for me for one more minute. Now, what happened here is we have just a really smooth, process of the light across the whole scene. The camera is dragging shutter, that term that we use.
Slow sync.
Slow sync. It's pulling in some ambient exposure. And you know what also, I oftentimes feel if you go to a 2-light solution, your recycle,
It's shorter, right?
Right there with you.
Yeah.
All right, this is the way we're going to do this. Everybody see me all right? No. Oh, okay. All right. I guess I'll have to adjust this, huh? Now, what we're doing up here is just doing a light panel. Now, a little bit more sophisticated. Obviously, a little bit more work. But as you can see, it goes up pretty simply. All right. Okay, ladies, here we go again. Positions, please. My goodness. All right. Now I'm going to do a quick test picture here because we put up this newfangled light source, and we want to see how we're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Very smooth. Very smooth.
Silky light quality now.
You know what the amazing thing is? All the exposure information is originating at the point of view of the camera. and hence I can put these lights behind something. Okay, like this light panel. Have you noticed I've touched none of the camera controls?
It compensates automatically.
You know,
ITTL.
ITTL. I'm still in the same exposure I was when I didn't have this up.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Okay, but not, again, not as amazing as you guys. Hey Bob, I'm going to start to shoot a couple pictures, but could you get that low fill card for me again?
The low fill.
Ready? Dance positions, everyone. Last time. Okay, 1:59 and 47 seconds. I've got 12 seconds left. Bob, count it down. Let me see how many pictures I can make. Oh no!
9.
Here we go.
8.
Right this way.
7.
Giggles.
6.
More giggles.
5. 4. 3.
He's cheating.
2. 1.5. 1.5. You're finished.
You're fantastic. Way to go, you guys. How about high fives all around? Ready? 1, 2, 3. There we go. There we go. All right, fantastic. Way to go. So I would be looking for peak activity somewhere in the neighborhood where Melanie is. And perhaps we can rotate through there. Maybe we can take turns. Each of you do your own particular expressive move and or you know, bring to the party that your own persona as a dancer. No, she's got to jump toward the light. Okay, let's see how we do.
Okay, Joe, in this next scenario, we have some dancers who are going to go through some jumps and leaps for you. What's your ideas on handling motion with the speed lights?
A couple of different ways to go about showing motion when you're photographing with a still camera. One would be to go with the flow, show the motion, let the action blur.
Now, to show the blur with a speed light, you'd be going to what, slow sync flash?
Slow sync is a very useful tool for that. You've got the stopping power of the flash, but you're blending that with the ambient light condition and a slow sync that retains some sharpness, but also shows that blur, that dynamic action that the dancer leaping through the air is bringing to the party here. Okay, and go. Beautiful. Okay, and again, please. Okay.
You do it like this.
What do you think of this? Right now, what we're trying to do is see how well the flash will interact with the environment so that we have a bit of environment and we have some stopping power, but also the sense of motion in the dancer.
Yeah. So it's the shutter speed, the slower shutter speed that's allowing for that slight blur, and the flash coming from the hard side direction is causing that nice crisp light that freezes her. But the direction of the light works beautifully. You've got a specular light source coming in from the side. There's shadows, but they're very beautifully placed, and it really works great with her jumping into the light. Joe, I think the amazing thing is when we look at this beautiful photograph that it's a result of only one speed light. And again, it's a sample of slow sync flash. Now, are you doing second curtain here?
I'm just going into second curtain now. Let's see what happens there.
All right, great. And we can talk a little about that.
Alrighty. All right, ready to go, Jackie? Same thing. I'm really liking the leading lines. I'm panning along with you and trying to get some motion out of your jump. So height and motion is where I'm going here. Okay? Okay, so what do we think of this?
Works great. I think the second curtain sync puts that blur behind it, and then, you know, the flash going off just before the shutters close really works for this motion.
When you're using front curtain sync, the flash goes off at the beginning of the exposure. Rear curtain sync goes off just before the shutter closes. When you're doing motion, it's more logical to go rear curtain because then the blur is behind the subject and then the flash freezes.
Yeah, so you know the direction that the subject is going.
You know what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change things up a couple of ways. And how about we play with some color temperature and see how we do.
Great.
Okay.
So you're going to change your white balance.
I am. What I'm doing here is I'm taking that tungsten conversion filter, putting it on the strobe. That's keeping her warm, you know, and normally balanced. But then I shifted the camera, white balance of the overall, you know, what the camera's seeing in the overall scene to a tungsten.
Ah, so then the background's going to go rich blue.
Exactly.
And she's going to stay nice and warm.
Yep.
What's it look like?
Plus, we've got motion,
Whoa.
you know, which is actually quite beautiful. I think it's very, and very important for us as photographers to experiment. Experiment with color, with light, exposure, all of that stuff. I saw the pink tutu, and I thought, geez, if that melded a little bit into a bluish environment, could get very romantic, because
It does look almost like stage lighting now. It's so dramatic and so moody with that blue background.
So let's take a look and see if we're sharp. That's always a crucial question.
Wow.
We are.
Yeah.
With motion, there's always that sharp and sharp enough,
Yeah.
and the rear curtain helps us because what she's doing is flying and blurring, and then the flash fires at a much higher speed than the actual shutter.
Right, so it's a mix of blur, and then the flash is so quick that it actually creates a sharp edge light. And boy, the combination works beautifully. Years of watching cartoons have taught us that when something is moving in one direction, the blur's behind it, right?
Are you a fan of cartoons? I never would have guessed that.
No, no.
Beautiful.
The light is coming from the side, it's undiffused, and then you just played with complementary filtration, using the tungsten conversion filter on the flash, setting the white balance to tungsten. You've created that nice kind of tension between the warmth and the coolness of the background. It's just amazing. Then there's the whole thing with the action, the second curtain sync, all these elements coming together to make one very dramatic photograph.
And of course, throw into the mix all of that mechanics, and then throw Jackie, a beautiful dancer, and you're starting to really cook.
Right.
Thanks.
work. What about to freeze the action? What are your ideas for that?
Well, the speed lights have this remarkable capacity to link up with the cameras at remarkably fast shutter speeds. Traditional sealing for a strobe sync is generally 250th of a second. But with auto FP high-speed sync, we can go all the way to 8,000th of a second and stop action, just stone cold. 1, 2, 3, go. Lovely. Very nice. A couple of strategy points here. I backed off to a long lens. A long lens gives power and compression, and this dance move is all about power.
Right, right. An immediacy, that perspective compression gives it an immediacy.
Exactly. Also, with a quick move like this, especially with the power of a male dancer, I'm not going for pan and blur and romance here. I'm going for power, so I gotta nail it. It's gotta be sharp. Right now, this camera's reading 2500th of a second at f4.
So you have now gone from slow sync through normal sync speeds up into the auto FP high speed sync.
Exactly. So he goes up, we time it, at the peak of his jump, I hit him with not only the speed of that speed light, if you will, and how fast that flash is firing, but I couple that up with how fast the shutter is firing now.
Right.
Okay, again, 1, 2, 3, go. Wonderful.
And of course now, the ambient light doesn't play into this at all, so you've added a second light to come, so you have two speed lights coming from two different directions, because virtually the ambient is not a factor in this whatsoever, because you're at such a high shutter speed.
Exactly. We're probably going to do a few more jumps and try to really get it at the peak of the jump and the most expression of his dance form. All right, let's switch up. Chris, can you get in there? Okay, let's try again, please. Okay, very nice. Okay, let's stop for just a second. We're going to get a couple more lights going.
So you want to add a few more lights so you get a smaller working aperture with the auto FP sync.
Yes, what I'm gonna do here is we're gonna add a couple of lights so we complete the rim of light.
I see.
And also the bargain there is I'm getting more f-stop.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
Yeah, because at 2.8, you're getting part of the body in focus and part of the face goes a little soft.
Yep, exactly that. So I think what we can do is put a couple more lights lower than those two main lights that we have now. We'll keep everything in the same group because we're going to want things running at the same power. Because basically this is just one solid rim, and the effect I'm hoping for with the two lights per side will be to extend the rim and make it a line, like a hot line of light all around his very athletic form. Quite a beautiful arc that he's making in the air. So I'm trying to do that as best as I can. Okay, try to stay in the middle for me. Right there, there we go. Okay, Chris, your aces, you're done. Bravo.
Now what Joe has done here for the last shot of the day is ingenious. It's getting dark, it's rainy outside,
Okay.
but Joe is simulating late afternoon sunlight. He's placed an SB900 strobe with a tungsten conversion filter outside on the street. Brad's watching it over it. He's using an SB900 on the camera as a master to trigger that flash. Now because of the angle of the flash, he's got some real specular light coming through here, and he's placed a couple of light and a ladder here as shadow elements, and he's got the dancer bathed in this warm light, surrounded by these interesting shadows. Joe, that is a great solution to the miserable light, basically, we have out here, and creating drama. And who would have thought that light could throw so far?
The light is amazingly powerful. I've worked with these units, and they continue to surprise me, I guess is what I'm saying, because that light is in the street, in the rain, in a plastic bag. I'm translating a signal to it. Exposure, all that information is being translated to the receiver out there in the street. It's flying back through this really huge window, creating the grid pattern, which is important. Distance is important when you're trying to create shadows, because the further the light source is from the shadow, the more clean and distinct the shadow is. If I had to put this light in here, the shadows would be all mushy, you know, you wouldn't have any definition to them. So the distance is key here. And what we did additionally, because I always am a big advocate of putting your light in a surprising place, and then I don't have a problem with throwing things in front of that light. Sure. Like the movie light that we have here, the ladder, we all drug those in and strategically placed them just to create a little
extra shadow.
Yeah, you know, I mean, why not?
So what you've got is a warm colored light, you've got an undiffused light, and you've got it coming from an outside direction again. And again, using those three elements of control, color, quality, and direction, you've created a wonderful, evocative photograph.
A few more, Melanie, and then we're done. We actually could call it a day at that point. Instead of just simulating the end of the day, why don't we do a few more frames and call it a day, all right? Because you worked very hard. All right, appreciate it. Here we go. How about a different move? Slightly different move, okay? And go. Beautiful.
Weddings. If you own a camera, sooner or later someone may ask you to shoot one. Now today we're going to explore some tips and techniques using Nikon's wireless speedlight system to handle these kind of situations. We've got our beautiful bride being made up here in this lovely New England inn. Let's get to work. Hey Joe.
Hey Bob, how's it going?
Good, good. So what's our location assessment here today?
Well, we're in a very pretty place. That's fantastic. So what we got here, I mean, Shaney's being made up, and I'm immediately confronted with a backlit, an intensely backlit situation. I'm looking towards windows. So the first thing I'm going to deal with is the overall exposure value of the scene, which is in reference to the camera, what the camera's going to see and how it's going to meter it.
Exactly, the available light.
Exactly. So let's just take I'll just take an average reading, 0-0 compensation, and see what happens. My suspicion is that we're going to have detail in the background, but Shaney's going to go completely out of the picture here. So let's see how we do. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right, nice enough scene. She's pretty dim. We really can't shoot that as it stands right now. But we're going to have to selectively introduce some light.
Okay.
You know, so
Alrighty, yeah, just
think of it as available light. It's in your camera bag. It's always available. So I'm going to give you this.
Alrighty.
All right, that's going to be your handheld. You got to program that to, let's go channel 1, group A.
Cool. All right, I'll get a diffuser.
All right, yeah, that'd be great. This commander now will drive that, okay? So I'll tell you what, Bob, why don't you come from this side, because that's, the natural fill for this, I think, should come from the window side, right?
Yeah,
that's
you gotta play with the light. You can't overpower it.
No, we're not going to fight it. Let's see what we can do. Okay, Shaney, I'm going to ask you to work with me a little bit here, and there we go. That's awful nice. Good, good. Very nice. Pretty?
Joe, I noticed that you've changed lenses. You're not using the 70 to 200 anymore. What have you got on there?
Well, I switched over, Bob, to an 85-1.4. And that lens is, it's extremely popular for weddings because you want that limited depth of field romance of the, soft, very pretty. And I'm actually coupling up or doubling up the softness by not actually shooting Shani, I'm shooting her reflection in this old mirror, which is going to impart its own set of imperfections and might be a little dreamy and very pretty.
Which is exactly what you want in this situation.
Could you go back to the other eye? That kick of the head was beautiful. So there's one of our results, Bob.
Yeah, and it's dynamite. It has such a lovely, soft feel. And I noticed that you were doing, playing around with exposure compensation, EV compensation, and not really because anything was wrong, but you were getting different looks by using different flash and ambient light balances.
I was going for kind of a light, open, airy feel. Nothing really substantially, saturated and deep. Here's a detail I shot.
Yeah, the handheld mirror, when you had her pick that up, that's tremendous.
Well, what happens too at f1.4, another term that gets thrown around when you're working at shallow depth of field is selective focus.
Yes.
That means that at 1.4, I've got just a sliver of sharp focus, dropping that right on her eye. Everything else just goes into these pleasing kind of soft colors. There you go. Now, as you look towards those windows here, you'll see I've got a flash out the window. That is your key light. Now I may need you to cheat yourself just to turn your body this way just a hair so I can see you better, but the direction of your head and your vision should be out the window. So it's sort of a profile shot, and I'm working a wide angle shot because this shot, even though it's a portrait, it's really about the room too and the field of the light. So that's it, Shani. Perfect. Very nice. Okay. I think we're doing pretty well here.
Yeah, that looks great. It's almost like a backlight. It really, really highlights the veil there. And you're going against kind of the logic. The logic would be to use a soft light, but here you're using a very hard light, but it's working wonderfully because of the direction.
It is. It's a really directed light, and it gives good dimension to the room. So let me just knock off a couple more here. Shani, just a little more that way. And if you notice here too, I'm using a 12 to 24 millimeter lens, Bob, which I have not used so far. It's a really wide view.
Lens, yeah. What about your white balance, Joe? Where are you there?
I went to a cloudy white balance, which gives an overall feeling of warmth to the value of the light. And I think that's pleasing in this instance because right now we have a mix of lights out there. It's kind of cloudy daylight, but then every once in a while the sun pops out. Then I have a flash. So to unify the whole thing and make it seem, just like a nice filtered light, I think the cloudy white balance is a nice way to go.
Yeah, it warms it up just enough. It looks great.
Let me do a couple more wide, but then I think this also opens up the opportunity, as we were saying. Once you get something lit, change up your lenses, get a couple of different points of view.
Which long lens you're thinking about, 85 or the 70?
Let's try the 85. Thanks. Okay, Shani, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in a little bit tighter, okay? And I may run into some shadows.
You want some fill?
Yeah, if you could grab a diffuser. Let me just check it out and see how we're doing. Okay, Shani, this way. Here we go. That's very, very nice. Okay, all right. Really pretty, but I think a little too hard. Yeah. A little too hard. Let's do this. Let's take a diffuser, okay? Let's just take a big... this is a staple for wedding photographers everywhere, is to use some sort of, whether it's loose material, a bed sheet, a store-bought diffuser, just some milky kind of translucent material. Okay. So let's come between Shani's face and the light source.
Okay.
Come on in here and let's see how we do.
So what you're doing now, Joe, is essentially taking that specular light source and making it a larger light source.
Exactly.
Thereby softening it.
Let's give it a try. Okay, very nice. Let's come even closer, Bob. Let's not step on our veil, though. Okay. Just really nice. That's great. Perfect. Bob, I'm going to ask you to come even a little closer.
Beautiful lady. Beautiful lady. So, Joe, this is a classic situation for your three-quarter bridal portrait. What's your strategy here?
Well, as always, in the back of my mind, moving fast, So use basic equipment, you know. Shoot through umbrella, which I know is going to give you a nice soft light. One of the features of the SB900, which is my main light here, is I can go right into the menu of that particular speed light and program in what they call an even source of light. They've got center, and they've got standard, and they've got even. Even is a nice dispersion of light, even, as it suggests, right across the surface of the light, you know, no variance.
That'll take advantage of the size of the umbrella.
Right. And also, what some folks oftentimes ask me is, hey, you're using the dome diffuser and the umbrella? And I'm like, sure, you know, why not?
Softer the better.
And we're close enough that even a little bit of light loss from the diffuser is not going to hurt us at all.
Sure.
Then behind Shaney, I've got a small softbox, and it's pointed directly down into the ground. It's got a warming filter on it, a tungsten conversion filter, that's going to give me a little warm glow.
Okay, so you've got a big diffuse source, and then you've got a backlight for separation. I'll let you get on it.
All right, let's take a look. All right, Shaney, here we go. You look absolutely wonderful. Perfect. Let's try a couple of these. Wonderful. So here's our result so far.
It's looking beautiful.
Very nice.
A little directional?
Little directional. So I'm going to suggest or think that we're going to give you a little fill light here, Shaney, okay? Just a little beauty glow, a little drama.
Off the floor?
Yep, let's do that. I'm going to use the gold side of this card, okay? And that's going to give us maybe a little bit of warmth. All right, very nice. You know, I think we got a winner here.
You got a winner.
You know, if we look here, we go back to the last one.
Yeah. Yeah.
See how that is?
All those shadows under her eye, under the nose, all filled in with that golden glow, and she's actually, well, she's glowingly beautiful as it is, but now the light is as well.
Yep. Okay, not an opportunity to be missed. Big smile, here we go. Stay with me now. My overall setting here for my my camera, I'm shooting fast. I'm shooting at a 250th of a second, 4.5.
Okay.
The 250 X's out all the ambient light.
Right, you're completely negating it.
Right. The 4.5 gives me a little bit of depth of field because here I've got flowers, you know. I've got the eyes, and you know, and the detail on the gown, the pearls. I don't want to go, in this instance, we've been working a lot at 1.4 with the 85 for that dreamy effect.
Sure.
For the formal portrait.
Here you need to be a little deeper with your depth of field. The relationship of the main light to your fill.
It's pretty interesting what's happening. I've got 3 groups now, A, B, and C, okay? A group, my main light, 0, 0, theoretically full strength. There's no compensation dialed in. Okay, B group, I'm running way low, minus 2.3.
That's the backlight.
Exactly, little bit of glow.
All you need is a little separation.
Exactly. But now the C group, I would have bet money before I started that I would have had to dial that down.
Yeah, you'd think that.
But, you know, here we are. I think it might be a function of the distance we have it. It's a little back from the main. It's spreading over that gold surface. And it's pitching in at just the right, you know, value.
Could be that the camera is smarter than we are.
No, that's not.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Come on.
Go back to work. Go back to work.
Good look. All right, let's relax for a second. So we've cropped in a little bit to the flowers, still have the portrait, and have a really nice expression on her. Let's see how we did in terms of, you know, just kind of covering in terms of sharpness. I think we're right there.
Yeah, it's looking really nice. Boy, that low fill really makes a world of difference. It just puts that finishing touch on it.
Very nice. I'm not sure we need to go further because we got to get her to the church.
On time.
Okay, now Shaney, just look at me. Beautiful. Okay?
Joe, I have to admit, you don't see many wedding portraits that involve horses, but you really took advantage of the location.
Yeah, why not? I mean, there's no law of nature that says when you shoot a wedding, you have to be locked into the traditional, you know, group portrait, 3/4 bridal portrait. I like to freelance my situations as best I can, and it comes from years of you know, being a photojournalist, apply those skills to any situation.
Now, you had some nice soft light going there, but still you used a speed light. Can you talk a little about that?
Sure. We started off, and here's the beauty of the system. We migrated really through several stages of light. We went from pretty intense backlight into open shade effectively as the sun kept going down behind the trees.
Right.
And you know, you could probably make an exposure and available light kind of a situation out of this, but you'd risk, I think, by getting detail into the shadow side, you'd risk blowing out the highlights of the white gown, the white horse. So the solution to me is apply a little light from the camera position, almost as a gentle fill, really, not a big main dominant light.
Right, well, you used an umbrella to diffuse it, so it was a diffuse fill. It was very close to her and the horse, and when the horse calmed down, it made for a beautiful portrait. Did you use flash value lock it near the end there?
Exactly. The camera sees a frame, but with the horse's head moving, for instance, that aperture priority reading is going to vary, it's going to fluctuate. But I wanted my flash oftentimes to stay at a certain realm or a certain value. So flash value lock is a feature on the CLS system linking to the camera where you can go into the camera menu and you can program that flash value lock to be hot or active when you press, say, the function button on the front of the camera. So all I have to do is tap one button and I can lock the value.
So the speed light puts out the same amount of light no matter what happens to the available light reading.
Exactly.
Very helpful in a quick moving situation like this. You got one more in you?
Oh, absolutely.
There's one around the back, right?
All right, let's give it a try. Shady, just lift up the veil. Just kind of play with the veil just for a second. Go, go, go. Let your arms go and just let it stay right there.
Joe, for the last shot of the day, you came down to this beautiful natural setting. You had a lot of beautiful light on the mirror-like surface of the lake. You brought Cheney in among the ferns. Can you explain how you kind of brought the two light levels together?
Sure. Lots of disparity in terms of the zones of exposure.
Right, the back was much brighter than the foreground.
Right. Now you could slam away with a speed light, bring the exposure in the foreground, up a whole bunch of levels, but then you lose the background and you lose this. So it's kind of meeting in the middle. We set up a light panel, 3-foot by 3-foot diffuser, and we put 2 speed lights through it. Not for power purposes, but what I do sometimes with a broad surface like that is I increase the volume of light. Go directly behind Shady, crouch down, stay just in silhouette, just like that, please, Shady. Okay, just so you guys know, I'm killing the main light here. The third speed light was kind of this wing and a prayer sort of thing. Oh, maybe we could try something. I'm always willing to try something once. So we located that speed light directly behind Shaney's veil. And we colored it with a very warm gel. It's a tungsten conversion gel, as a matter of fact. Hence now I have a golden glow coming through the veil.
It did almost look like the last rays of sunset just coming back from the backlight. It kept the feeling of that backlight, but the front light was nice and soft and even, made for a beautiful photograph. And yet, you're out here in the woods and it's the same basic approach. A nice soft light from the side, a little kicker rim there, applied in so many different situations, but the basics are always the same.
It is. I mean, lighting is one of those things that oftentimes presents, problems or mysteries, but they're very solvable. Think of it in pieces, and that's actually the speed light system enables you to do that, because I'm thinking, okay, my main light's group A, I have to dial that in. I've got another light here in group B, dial that in, and then you start to match those exposures.
Now, Joe, at one point you went to a really high-tech solution, the good old-fashioned king-size bed sheet. What was your thinking on that?
Diffusion is diffusion. Can come in many forms, as we've seen. In this case, we grabbed a white bed sheet, hung it between 2 stands, and then we brought 2 speed lights directly, really over my shoulders. She is very frontally lit, and it's oftentimes a very, very flattering way to light someone, because it's a very full and soft light right on the subject.
And again, it's a giant light source. Now you're talking about something at least 6 feet square there, so it becomes a very soft light, and the results really showed that.
Yeah, I mean, it's wraps, and it's pretty, and it's soft. You can improvise almost endlessly when you're in the field, and you need to. You really need to.
Yeah. Well, speaking of wraps, I think this day is wrapped. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy.
All right. That's a wrap. Here we go.
We're here in Gloucester Harbor, and this is the oldest fishing port in the country. It was founded in 1623. Now, Joe's found this fantastic old fishing shack, which can't be much younger than that, and he's found an interesting old salt for a portrait subject. So let's see how he's handling it. Joe, what's your location assessment here with the shack? We've got some open shade here.
Well, I'm actually very thankful for the open shade. And as you know, a big part of this game is just recognizing good light when you see it.
Exactly.
And then you can use these units, and they're pretty intuitive. You can tweak and push and pull that available light to your advantage. So we got really nice patina, you know, and we got nice detail. All I'm trying to do now, I think, is just try to light our subject a little bit selectively.
Yeah, because the basic quality of the light is diffused, so we have the soft light, and I guess, but you're still some shadows, maybe.
Yeah, if we look at, you know, you'll see our subject, Richard. He's got great character-driven face. He's wearing a ball cap. Ball caps,
yeah.
you know?
Yep.
They're, you know, you got to get some light in the eyes. So what I'm going to try to do for my foreground light is take a little flick, just a small amount of power out of S600, an SB600, and bounce it off the floor. As we've already talked about, you know, sometimes that low light is a very effective way to inform the face, fill some shadows. Also, what I'm doing, because the interior of the shack here is so interesting, I want to pump a little light into the interior. So I'm going to fly a couple of units through that window and just give a little bit of detail. You know, the thing about all photos, as you know, is depth. You know, something going on in the foreground, the middle ground, the background. So I'm going to light that background so the viewer's eye has a chance to reach back in there. All right, Richard, here we go. Good.
Joe, I see you're using the SU800 here to trigger these.
Yeah, it's a very effective triggering unit. It sends a really powerful signal that communicates to the flashes, and there's a chance I might get into 3 groups on this. So I figured I'd go right to the SU, and I can trigger A, B, and C groups from this. Right now, I've only got A and B active, but you know me. We may get to C.
Okay, cool.
Richard, could you adjust the bill of that cap just a little bit up? Thank you. One of the things, Bob, I know from years in the field, we always have to remind ourselves as photographers, talk to the subject.
Exactly.
Relate to the subject.
You can't fall silent behind the camera, because then they start thinking they're doing something wrong.
Exactly. All right, here we go. Really nice, really nice. Way to go, Richard. A couple of components here, Bob, that are happening that we're doing pretty well. That low light that you're holding, giving a little bit of glow, but look what's happened to the interior.
Yeah, now there's separation because of those lights you placed outside the window.
And that looks like daylight. You know, if you got strong daylight coming in the side of a window, it's going to kind of bleach out here and there. Going to be highlights and a little bit of, you know, maybe even a little bit of glare. Your eye is accustomed to that. That's what normal daylight does.
Exactly.
Thank you, Richard. I can't resist coming in there because there's so much detail. Could I make a picture of your workbench? All right. So to do that, you know, what I'm going to have to do, Bob, is I'm going to have to change up strategies. I'm going to take this SU800, which is a real directional signal. I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to do a flash trigger with the SB900. Because what I'm going to try to do now is photograph inside.
Using the lights from outside.
Using lights outside.
All right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this signal and fly it out the window and see how we do. Because it's just, you know, it's so interesting inside this shack that I don't want to pass up the opportunity. So, can I have that 900? Yeah. All right, it's kind of tight in there, so I'm just going to go in and see if I can make this work.
I'll guard the door. Right.
Richard, if you could, you know, take a step back in here, I'm going to try to make a picture of you at your workbench. All righty. So, all right, that looks great. That looks great. Okay. You know, this is working out really well, but Bob, can I ask you for your help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me show you what's going on here. We've got Group A coming through the window, and that's creating really nice portrait light.
Window light, yeah.
Really nice light. But, you know, this shack here is like a light sponge. Yeah. Light hits these dark tones of wood, disappears, okay? And I want some moody saturation, but I also need a little highlight kind of thing going on. Okay. So I'm on aperture priority, and I'm at -0.7, because the whole thing is kind of deep. I want to keep that quality, which means now, because I'm soaking down the exposure, I'm kind of driving it down, I got to highlight a little bit. Yeah. So that 600 could help us out here.
All right, well, I got it from the first shot, so
okay.
We're cool.
All right, so let's put that, I'm going to put that Group B.
All right.
All right, I'm going to program that in here to be a Group B light, and I'm going to run it right off the bat at -2.
Okay, just for a kiss of light.
Just a little bit, because the last thing you want to do is highlight the background.
Right.
I want all the
It's
attention
all
to
about
stay
him.
on Richard,
Yeah.
but I want some detail back there.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect way to do it. So again, let's go to a
All
gold
right.
or warm kind of
All right.
fill. Maybe stash it up in there.
Okay.
And you take care of that back of the room for me. Real nice, real nice. Stick with me. All right, Bob, let's take a look. See what that did there? Wow.
Yeah, just open it up.
Just pull the little detail back in within the dynamic range of the camera.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the meter's incredibly
Yeah.
sophisticated in these cameras. Okay, so we got a basic situation for a portrait, but we got a problem,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Backlight. It's a lot brighter back there than in here.
I mean, here's the thing. I'll put the camera on aperture priority, and Leland just look right at me, and I'll take what ordinarily I would think, it'd just be a beautiful picture, and she's gone.
Well, this is a situation a lot of people run into when they're traveling and doing shots like this, where they're trying to show the person in the environment, but the background is so much brighter.
Exactly. I mean, we've got the double whammy here. We've got a green canopy, so we've got light contamination. She's going to look like, she's from Mars.
Seasick.
Yeah, exactly. And also no light up front here. Intense light out there. So the natural thing I'm going to go for here is a speed light solution. So my solution here is to put an SB 900, hot shoe that straight away here, and click it over into being a master. And I'm going to control one light right now.
1A?
1A. 1A.
Group.
All right.
Cool.
So let's see
Where
how
do
we
you want
do.
the light, Joe?
Let's do this. Leland, let's slide down just a touch, okay? Let's see about this. Bob, why don't we just come from, pretty standard position, like 3/4 kind of high, all right? Leland, just relax, and we're gonna go with an aperture priority solution. Here I am at 125th at f10. Okay, it's already a lot better, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
If you look at the first one we did, where she's
yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
then we
Now
look
she's
here.
in there.
Okay.
Nice wraparound light.
Okay.
A little harsh.
A little hard,
Yeah.
hard. But also the scene is still a little bright. I've got, not only exposure variance here, but I've got a bright sky that's even yet another realm of exposure. So what I'm going to try to do on my aperture priority setting is I'm going to minus out a stop from the whole scene so I can saturate that color.
Yeah.
So that's my first move. And take away a stop. Let's try the strobe again.
Alrighty.
All right. Looking good, looking good. Way to go, Leland. Okay. All right. Not bad. The background scene, but what did I do by taking away one stop?
You underexposed her as well with the flash.
I affected the speed light as well. So now that's an important thing to remember. When you make an input to the camera like that, you're making a global adjustment.
Exactly.
The whole scene saturates it, including
the
this.
flash.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit that group.
And that you can do that because you can control the flash exposure independently from the available light exposure with the speed light system.
Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to program +1 into this light, which is going to give me that stop back for the speed light up front, and let me
the
have
saturated
that.
background.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's give it a try. Okay. Perfect. Very nice. All right.
All right.
Got it back. Got it back.
Exposure's back. You got everything nailed, but the quality of the light that's coming from the flash.
Exactly. So let's go to a portable light shaping tool, a little bit of a softening device, and let's see.
Something like this?
You're amazing.
I've read your mind.
Yeah. All right. Here we go, Leland. Right at camera. Very nice. Nice look. Nice look. Let's do a couple of those, okay? All right. So just kind of rock and roll here. Look at me. That's great. Perfect.
And Joe, the reason this light is softer is because it's larger than the previous source. So the larger the light source, the softer the light, as we know.
Exactly. Nice. Pretty nice. Still a little hard, though.
Yeah.
A couple of ways of curing that. We could bring in maybe a card underneath for a little lift or fill, or we could go to a bigger light source.
Bigger light source.
Let's try a bigger light source.
Bigger light source? Umbrella?
Umbrella. Yeah.
All right.
A handheld umbrella. Real good. Very pretty, very pretty. Let's do a couple right here. Real nice, good look. Now we've gone from kind of a basic, it's almost like a light of necessity, you know, when you use that hard light. Here, what we're doing is we're tailoring the light even further. We're using the speed light system. We're still in aperture priority. We're still talking wirelessly, but now we have a light shaping tool that's giving us a good quality of light.
And it's diffusing the light beautifully, and it's giving a beautiful wraparound light to Leyland's face there, and her position looking into it really works.
It does. But here's the thing, there's a ton of background in here, and some of it's great, some of it's a little distracting.
Yeah.
We'll minimize it by lack of depth of field. All right, let's open up a bit.
That's going to raise your shutter speed up.
Yeah, exactly. I've been able to shoot at, you know, around 125th, 160th at f8, but let's open up the f-stop. When we open up f-stop, we've got a closed down shutter speed, which ordinarily would tell us we can't use flash.
Right, because it'd be above the normal sync speed of 250th.
Right. Auto FP high-speed sync.
There you go.
Great look, great look. Okay, awesome. Here we go. Beautiful. So Leyland looks beautiful, no surprise there. Nice quality of light.
Background is soft, but...
You know what I'm thinking? It leads me to believe that maybe if I even threw it further out of focus, and the way I can do that now is to go to a longer lens.
Yeah.
All right, here we go, gang. Okay, working very well. Way to go, Leyland. That's very nice. Nice look. Very nice. Good, right there. Stay there, stay there. Let me have a couple right there. Okay, all right. So, pretty quick sort of, you know, situation where we ended up just making a studio portrait. We don't have too many control of the elements here. This is where some of the technology is really helpful. Even though the results here are pretty dramatic, anybody can do this. 2800s, leave the dome diffusers on, just in clamps, okay? Let's put it up there, yep, that'll be great. Whoops, too much? Right there, let's try that.
Well, it's come to this. We started in the studio showing you the basics of using one speed light. We added a second and third light. We talked about the direction, the quality, and the color of light. Then we joined Joe McNally in the field to see how it's done. Well, this is Joe's pièce de résistance. He's got 9 speed lights going for this final shot. Let's catch up with him and see what he's doing.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Joe.
How's it going?
Oh man, this looks like a Hollywood set.
Yeah, with you know, small speed lights. I mean, you can do a lot with these. I mean, you gotta take your time, and a picture like this is building blocks. It can overwhelm you right off the bat if you'll allow it to. But if you think about lighting in pieces, A group, B group, C group, which actually corresponds to the groups that we're using with the speed lights, you know, I've got a, you know, just think of it this way. You know, foreground, middle ground, background.
Sure.
You know, and so it becomes more logical that way.
Sure, and you got to light each plane.
Exactly. You want to take a look?
Sure.
Okay, so camera point of view is here. You know, I got a D700 with a 2470, so I got the FX format, so I got the whole scene. So I got to be careful with my main light. That's off camera up in here. Pretty simple, you know, umbrella, shoot through. It's going, by the time it gets over here to Richard, who's our main character of the shot, it's going to be nice and rich, character driven. Yep, have some shadows to it. And then I'm seeing all the way down the dock. So once you see something in the picture, you kind of want to light it, you know? You want people to see back in here.
Well, sure, and especially since you're going to be shooting this at twilight, so there's not going to be much available light.
Exactly. So hence, this guy is here. This is also a Group A light, and as you can see, I got it way high.
Yeah, so it's going to spread, light the whole dock.
The psychology of that is that at the end of a dock, you might have a lonely light, you know, almost like a street light.
Like a street light. Yeah,
exactly.
fantastic.
So we're going to create a little pool of light down in here.
Cool.
All right. Now I found that the deep blue of the boat is soaking up a lot of light. So I got to put a flare.
All right, a little kicker.
Exactly.
A
now,
little kicker.
Here's the thing. Angle of incidence, angle of reflection.
You're going to get a highlight.
Exactly. So I'm going to get a little skim off of that. A painted surface is actually very reflective. So I skip that light this way, and I'll get a little separation between my subject and this dark blue of the boat.
A little rim on him too, probably.
Yeah, that's the happy accident, but we don't tell editors that.
Okay,
all right,
yeah.
All right, so we'll just keep that to us guys in the field.
Exactly.
And
now,
then,
what about the wheelhouse here?
Wheelhouse is obviously completely dark, so I got 3 speed lights up in that wheelhouse. Hopefully it's going to provide that glow, you know, kind of late, you know, fading dusk. In the ceiling area, I've got an SB800, and down to create kind of that instrument glow, I've got two SBR200s. The tiny close-up lights.
With the red gels.
Yeah, they're fantastic for just creating little pools of light. And then to create overall light, in a group C, I've got up there on the aerial, a couple of overheads, just for some spread to kind of define the area. And so I've got 9 speed lights, 3 groups, foreground, middle ground, background, and we may go further because I'm already seeing there might be some dead spots, so we have a couple waiting in the wings to drop into the picture.
Well, twilight is coming. We better get ready.
All right, here we go. All right. Bingo. Okay. All right. Now. All right, here we go. That's it. Good. Here we go, gang. Okay. Hang on just a second, please. Snoot that, heavy snoot it. All right. Bring it in. Loop it around the dock here very quickly. Everything's good. Everything's good. You guys are awesome. We're looking very good here. Will, you got to come way forward in the bow. Okay, right there. That's good. That's good. 8-second exposure. Hang in there. Here we go. Right at the lens. Right at the lens. Hold, 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 hold. Tango. Awesome.
Joe, that was amazing. You were working under a lot of pressure, the constantly fading light, all the strobes, but it all came together at the end.
Yeah, we had to make some significant adjustments. You see here, up in the LCD here, you see the sky, you see where it's just kind of getting dead and gray?
Yeah.
That is a problem. It required some extra work, but I thought I could turn that sky blue by shifting my white balance.
From daylight to tungsten.
To tungsten.
Well, here you've got that rich blue now. The strobes are gelled back to normal.
Right.
Everything is kicking in. Everything looks perfect.
Yeah, we got a nicely balanced picture out of it, and we were really, dropping some lights in there pretty quick at the very end. We dropped in the water light, if you recall.
Yep.
Because that side of the boat was going very dark.
Yeah, you were losing it against the edge, but you brought it back. And also when you brought Will out, the captain, out of the wheelhouse and onto the deck, you added yet another speed light with a snoot.
Exactly. We made a very tight beam out of that light via the snoot and popped, I guess at that point we'd be up to, 12?
I think 11 or 12.
Something like that.
I
Lost count.
Speed lights,
Lost count.
And Joe, near the end, as the light was dropping, your shutter speed was dropping to 2 seconds, 4 seconds, and yet the available light and the light from all those speed lights were blending beautifully.
I really rely on the camera. One thing about these cameras, in this fading kind of light, and when that meter looks up at that sky, it reads it very well.
Yeah, and the blend is perfect. Joe, it's been a great shoot and you've really made some amazing images, but I think the payoff is to see them printed up big and beautifully like this.
That's the amazing thing now, the digital technology that we have. I mean, the results are immediate. We can see the results in the camera and almost as quickly come out with a positive result, be proud of it, share it with your family, put it on the wall. We're living in an amazing time here photographically.
One of the most interesting things about this week and watching you do your thing is how many different looks you get out of one simple speed light. Like this shot, for instance, this beautiful portrait of the bride. Let's kind of walk back and talk us through that light again.
Well, this is one of those things where I set up a hard light to begin with, just a light out the window, no diffusion. But as we've talked about on location, always try to work a situation as best as you can in as many different variety of ways that you can. So I started with a hard light and a wide lens, and I ended up here with a slightly telephoto, an 85-1.4, very popular with wedding photographers because of the limited depth of field. And you brought in that diffuser panel, just a broad sheet of diffusion between that hard light source and her face.
Another killer one light portrait here out on the ship. This was what, some auto FP high-speed sync, I think.
The challenge here was dealing with the light contamination on the boat from the green awning and the fact that we were, I'd say, 6 stops under the main ambient light condition just outside the boat, that bright sunlight. So auto FP sync is a perfect solution for that. You can go to high speeds on your, way above the normal sync speed of 250th of a second. In fact, you can go all the way to an 8,000th if you need to. I believe we shot this at 2500th of a second.
Yeah, And there was still enough power to diffuse this light, because this was diffused through one of your tri-grips. Now this is a really unusual use of one light, because you actually took the light and put it outside of the building to shoot through the window.
Pretty simple, really. The trick, if you will, of the photograph is the placement of the light. I looked around. Windows are where light comes from anyway. Oftentimes I try to mimic that window light or shape it by the use of a speed light placed outside the building. In this instance, it's out on the street. I'm able to translate my CLS signal to it. It's a one light solution with hard shadows.
And the warmth of the color makes it look like the last rays of sunlight coming in through the window.
Exactly.
Now, Joe, this is a beautiful impressionistic photograph. Can you walk us through this one?
Sure. Actually, not that much to walk through. It's a one light solution.
Coming from the side.
Right. She's a stage or theater person, so she's used to terminology. I told her, here's your key light, follow that light. I'm triggering it from the master or the commander on the camera itself. There's nothing fancy here. There's no umbrella or diffusion. It's just one raw light.
But you did use the rear curtain sync, because we get that lovely movement, a little bit of blur, and then she's kind of frozen sharp, so we really get a sense of the movement here.
Exactly. One thing to remember when you're doing this sort of stuff, you're following someone, start that panning motion with your camera before you actually squeeze the shutter. Because if you're waiting there, you'll either miss it or the action might be a little bit, not as smooth. So if you're moving the camera, that rear curtain works with you, and that slow shutter speed just follows her, and then of course the flash freezes her right at the top of her jump.
And I think one of the things that makes this picture so dreamy is what you did with the color balance. Now, you went to a tungsten color balance to get that beautiful blue in the background, but what did you do on the flash?
Well, I warmed the flash up to bring her skin tone back to a fairly normal sort of flesh tone. But you're right, the tungsten balance for overall casts that kind of dreamy blue. So for me, dance is kind of dreamlike anyway, and the color balance here just helps that out a little bit.
Yeah, so it's always that same three basics, isn't it? The direction of the light, the quality of the light, the color of the light. We've been talking about that all week. Joe, for this last shot of the bride here, what were you thinking here?
This we did get a little bit more complex. For this, I used a light panel, or a fairly broad piece of fabric, if you will, as a diffuser. And I put two lights through that. I didn't do that for power purposes, because I'm still commanding them from the camera. I'm telling them their f-stop. What I do sometimes in that situation, I put the two lights up just to simply increase the volume of light. That will give me more spread, more wrap, more diffusion.
Sure. And I think you were also dealing with a very bright background, so you needed to raise the level of that light there.
Exactly. I kind of limited my depth of field by using a longer lens, so that background goes very pleasing, kind of greens and, out of focus in the background. Your attention goes right to her.
The icing on the cake for me, though, is what you did with the veil here with the backlight. You had another speed light behind her, which was gelled with a conversion filter, again, a little warm filter, and it just has that feel of a last ray of sunlight coming through there.
It's a tungsten conversion gel that I put on the SB900. The speed light's directly behind the veil, and naturally a fabric like this is made to be backlit. So I took a little bit of a chance, because the sensor for that speed light is actually directly behind her. So the strategy there was to take an SU800 and extend it via the SC29 cord. So we got that signal just around her, and we were able to trigger that and still retain the ITTL solution.
Worked like a charm. Ah, the rugged old salt. Look at him there. Wow,
great.
That just glows, that picture.
His face is just as battered as this old shack, really, and it's a good match.
Now, even though this looks like an available light photograph, the most interesting thing for me is when you do these doorway pictures, often what's inside goes to pure black, and yet we see a lot of detail. How did you achieve that?
Well, part of the beauty of the location is all the stuff that's inside. I wanted to pick that up. So there's a window just around the side of the building. And I ended up, because I wanted a big pop of warm light into the interior space of that building, I used 3 speed lights. And I can trigger them all again from my camera position. So that's what's picking up the interior. That left us with the problem of how to light him.
Right, and we had open shade out there, which is generally considered to be a kind of a soft light, but it wasn't quite soft enough for your purposes. And I remember we put something on the floor there.
in that open shade, what you have to be aware of as a photographer is oftentimes that light will have a bluish cast, a little bit cool. This all speaks to warmth. So when we threw that fabric down, it had a gold side reflector. And that picks up, you know, any light that's coming down there is going to bounce back up in a warm way. Then we complemented that even further by you were holding the SB 600.
600, bouncing it off. That floor fill is one of your kind of signature techniques, and it comes in useful not only in beauty portraits, but even something like this.
Sure, it gives a lot of detail, and also it helped me out because he's wearing a ball cap.
Yeah.
You got to get a little light in those eyes.
So 4 speed lights going on this one.
Yep.
And here it is, the magnum opus. You had about 12 speed lights going here by the time you were finished. This is just a killer shot, and we were working at twilight. Twilight was coming on you fast, and well, if you can remember, could you tell us where we had our speed lights here?
Well, I think we could quickly go kind of piece by piece, which is actually the only way to solve a problem like this and keep it together in your head, solve each area or zone of the photograph in turn. And when you have light dropping like this, it's dropping like a stone, and this is again where the CLS system for the speed lights will work with you because it's an automated, you know, if I had to run around and change all these exposures.
It'd still be there.
Oh man. So get your main light first. Always a good strategy. So I positioned him, I framed up the photograph, and in this instance I did lock the view down on a tripod. So I've got our old salt up front. He's looking at the camera in a portrait mode. So I lit him very simply, a shoot-through umbrella. Okay, that's one piece. Then I realized I had the whole dock to deal with too, so that's got to be accent lit, you know, not so much broad sources, but little spotlights here and there.
Yeah, you had a snoot going here, I remember that. You had one going on Will, the captain.
Right, we had a couple in the wheelhouse, and then if you recall, up on the aerial, we had a couple, I just call them top lights, just an overall broad cover light. Yeah. And there were 2 units up there.
And then you had one back here glancing off the boat to give us that highlight, angle of incidence, angle of reflectance highlight.
We were almost all set. I thought, you always think, okay, we're done. And then I made a picture and I realized that in the darkness, the far side of the boat had just disappeared, you know. So then we actually took a chance. We took a stand and we just grabbed the light and we put it down near the water line and just bounced it literally off the water.
Well, the whole shot just came together just as the light was fading. You got it in right under the wire. I think what's been really interesting this week is how we kind of started in the studio talking about the basics of light, the direction, the quality, and the color. Talking about some of the basic rules and then catching up with you in the field and watching how you apply those rules and sometimes break them in location situations to make really creative photographs.
Out on location and also in the studio sometimes, improvisation is the word of the location photographer or any photographer really.
Yeah, it was a fun week. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this DVD from Nikon, and I hope you'll be inspired to go out and try some of the same techniques with your Nikon CLS creative lighting system. On behalf of Joe McNally and me, Bob Christ, and Nikon, happy shooting.